Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. If your kids are younger than that, please use the YouTube Kids app.
Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot with a sore throat. I apologize if my voice sounds a little rough. I haven't been getting enough sleep lately. We big feet are used to sleeping during the day when you humans run around. But with so many of you staying quiet indoors all day long, it's been keeping me up. I wish you would all get out and make more noise so that I could get some sleep. We've got 3 very creepy Dogman stories today, each from a location requested by some of you in our polling the other day. One story is about the Pennsylvania Dogman, another is about the Michigan Dogman, and our third concerns a recent report of the Werewolf of Wisconsin. We'll get to all 3 of those in a moment, but first I get to make the exciting announcement that today's executive producer is none other than Hagridella herself, otherwise known as Sharon S. Hagridella Psychedella. Hagridella, what's a fella to do? If Hagridella is a witch, she must be the nicest kind, because she's a member of our paid subscribers club over at peterbernard.com. If you'd like to be a Scary Stories executive producer like Hagridella, just join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com or click the join button underneath this video screen. Then, like Hagridella, you'll have access to over 9 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories far too gory or wild to ever run on this channel, plus a new secret uncensored story each week at peterbernard.com. Now, let's get started with our next tale. It is alleged to have happened in Michigan, and, like the other 2 stories, it happened just last week, at least according to the person who submitted it. And we call this one the Dunn Location Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my wife and I recently had a sighting of the Dogman in the Dunn Location in Michigan. I am of the opinion that these creatures are advancing into our civilization and that we must keep them at bay. Fortunately, I think that our presence itself, once it is deemed safe enough for us to reassert it, will drive these foul creatures back to the smelly and sickening places I'm sure they come from. After seeing one of these beasts with my own eyes, I am certain that the Dogman is not just a dangerous animal, but is in fact a demonic or somehow evil one. My wife and I were in our car driving on Tobin Alpha Road, enjoying the night and each other's company. It would have been a night that we went out to a restaurant for dinner, so we decided to make the drive to the place and back anyway, just to have something to do. Also, we were curious if they were open for takeout. Sadly, they were not. It was on our way back when we had our sighting. My wife and I are God-fearing people, but we are also open-minded. We have both always allowed for the possibility of the existence of all sorts of creatures and entities, such as Bigfoot, or ghosts, or aliens, or yes, even Dogman. I won't go so far as to say that we believed in the existence of these things, but we didn't disbelieve either. Since you can't prove a negative, you really can't prove that any given cryptid or paranormal entity or phenomenon does not exist. Therefore, somehow or some way, it is possible that it's not impossible that they do live. Although both being very open to and sometimes even inviting paranormal or supernatural experiences, my wife and I have never really had one. When this sighting occurred, it took us both quite by surprise, I can assure you. We were talking about how they're saying that they're going to play Major League Baseball games with no crowds allowed in to watch, and then suddenly, there he was. The Dogman. It was unmistakable from the very first second that it could be nothing else but a Dogman. It was not a bear with mange, as I have seen photos of those. They are losing their dark fur. This creature did not resemble a bear with or without mange. Its head looked like a light-colored wolf head, except its fur was longer than I had ever seen on a wolf before. That fur blew in the wind. It had to have been 3 or 4 inches long, and this was all over the body. Even under all that fur, though, you could make out a very humanoid and very ripped physique. It looked like the Dogman version of the handsome blonde lifeguard at the beach. The creature walked out from between 2 trees onto the road in front of us, like he was walking out of his shower and forgot to wrap his towel around his nakedness. My wife let out a gasp when she saw him. I think she noticed how prominently he displayed his maleness. She kept saying, "Oh my," over and over again as the incident played itself out. I noticed how her interest in what was happening seemed somehow vastly different than mine. Sickened instantly by the clearly evil nature of the monster, I hit my car horn hard, hoping to scare it off. Instead, the light tan-colored Dogman adopted a threatening pose and began putting on a display that was meant to frighten me and was succeeding very well. My wife began shouting at me to leave the creature alone. We were facing an honest-to-goodness monster, and she was concerned that I not mistreat it. I couldn't make this up. This is what happened. I felt enraged, but I'm too old to act on rage impulses anymore. I wanted to run that thing down. It was clearly demon spawn. It had no positive function in our reality except to tempt the good to join the evil side that it obviously comes from. The side that my own wife was now acting to protect. I put my foot down on that gas pedal and I aimed that car directly at the Dogman in the center of the road. My wife shouted manically, frantically, threatening to divorce me if I hit that creature. I continued to drive directly at the ungodly thing, never flinching for a second, no matter how hard my wife tried to pull the steering wheel away from where I wanted it to go. And then, on a night when something impossible had happened, something else impossible happened. Just as that Dogman was about to meet my front fender, just as I was about to send this thing back to the hell it emerged from, that tall, light-haired, muscular Dogman blinked out. He just suddenly wasn't there. We drove right through where he had appeared to be, and he was not actually there. My wife cried for a while, then began praying. I tried to join her, but I don't know how to pray very well. We went home, and she went directly to bed. I stayed up for a while, then joined her. We've still never discussed the incident. It didn't happen that long ago, but I kind of feel like neither of us really want to talk about it too much, at least not with each other. It was extremely unnerving in so many different ways. We both surprised each other with our unexpected behavior, and we both feel that we had something very wicked visited upon us that night. Not that something evil visited us, but It was visited upon us. It was thrust upon us. It was forced into our lives somehow. I don't know exactly what I mean, but both of us feel that thing was put there in that forest for our benefit, or to study how we would react to it maybe, or to harvest our fear when we saw it, or something. It's probably something like that, but it's also probably something more. I think it's possibly something more than we can know as humans. Maybe it's something we will someday understand, or maybe it's something we aren't built to have the capability to ever know. But whatever this thing is, it's only going to come out at night and go boo. It's never going to come out in the daytime. And that, to me, is the solution. Keep the roads well lit. Keep your heart well lit too. Keep our parts of the world in the daytime, even at night. Let's get past this crisis so we can repopulate our parts of the world and fight to keep the day alive. Nothing else will keep the night creatures and evil spirits at bay. Nothing else will prevent further sightings of the done location, Dogman.
I shall return. Like last night's triple lupa, I shall return. I'll be back here May 23rd to help host our Memorial Day Military Dogman stories. All stories alleged to have happened to military service people or veterans. I'm going to read one of the stories myself. You won't want to miss it. It should prove to be quite memorial.
The Wisconsin Werewolf in Wausau. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I've got a short one for you, but I wish it was shorter still. As in, I wish it had never happened. But it did happen. I saw the Wisconsin Werewolf in Wausau. That's basically the entire story right there. I was driving home from a shopping trip, and it was getting dark out. I was driving on County Road West in Wausau, Wisconsin, and then the strangest creature I ever saw made a grand entrance. On the left side of the road over there, there's a very steep hill of rocks with trees way up on top. Well, a very large jet black furry thing fell down out of that high forest, tumbling down the steep embankment and somersaulting onto the road in front of me, where it proceeded to act as though it had meant to do that. I pulled the car to a stop as I watched it squatting and grooming itself as though that were the thing to do in the middle of a road. The huge animal took up a lane and a half. It was that wide and had to have been over 6 feet tall while squatting. I was terrified, but I was equally annoyed. I get stupid about things like that. I feel like my taxes help pay for these roads, and I have a right to drive down them. I know it sounds dumb, but that's how I am. I inherited it from both my parents. So whether it was a good idea or not, I began beeping my horn for the Dogman to move. The creature turned slowly and looked at me. In that first instant, it looked like the sweetest and most innocent dog you've ever known. It looked like someone's pet. It seemed it could be reasoned with. Then, in the very next second, its expression changed to one of anger and unhappiness. I saw its lips pull back, and I saw the creature's ridiculously large teeth emerge. The completely black animal stood up on all fours and had to have been 7 feet tall or taller. I did not notice the eye shine that people report with Dogman, but I did see that it had pointed wolf-like ears on top of its head, which mainly resembled a pitch-dark German shepherd. It snarled at me ferociously and I began battling my body's urge to evacuate. I put the car in reverse, and I started slowly backing away. The big dog didn't like that. It stood up. I mean, it was already standing up, but now it stood up on its hind legs. Now the thing towered over me impossibly. I hit the gas, driving in reverse. I went nuts, driving backwards as fast as I could, and eventually I nearly got into a collision with an officer of the law. He was kind enough to give me a summons and to drive the highway ahead of me in order to ward off werewolves and vampires. I only asked him to ward off werewolves. I don't know why he added vampires. Everyone knows vampires don't exist. I also wonder why he made me take that sobriety test. I mean, it's not like anyone should be surprised that people are still witnessing the Wisconsin werewolf in Wausau.
Literal swarm of very tall, black-furred, upright-walking, humanoid dogmen. It was an entire pack of them.
I saw the werewolf of Wyola. Dear Scary Stories NYC. About a 35 or 40 minute drive west of Philadelphia, there exists a town called Wyola, Pennsylvania. It's in a pretty posh area with a golf club, a country club, and a pleasure garden. No kidding, a pleasure garden. And now, thanks to everyone locking themselves at home for so long, I think we may finally be able to say that we have ourselves our very own werewolf. Or at least a dogman, but Wyola starts with a W, not a D. There are theories that certain frat boys were involved in pulling this all off as a stunt, but I was there, and if it was a fraternity prank, then they've gotten significantly more elaborate in the days since I attended classes. Another feature of our lovely area is a place called Skunk Hollow Park. It's a wild area where those of us who don't mind mingling with the riffraff and the hoi polloi can go hiking or fishing. It's a park that opens at dawn and closes before it gets dark. You may ask why they close the park before the sun goes down. I always wondered about that too. I have a theory now, though. So, this was just last week. I was walking back toward where I had parked my car after having hiked and just sort of hung around in the park for 3 or 4 hours. I needed time alone, and I needed some fresh air after being cooped up at home for so long. It was really beautiful and sunny for most of the day, and I lost track of time. There was a point after 5 p.m. when I was walking along near the Little Darby Creek when the atmosphere and the mood just suddenly changed. It got weirdly quiet for one thing, and it seemed a lot colder all of a sudden. It had gotten overcast and the temperature was dropping, plus the park was closing anyway, so I started making my way back to my vehicle. Once I got inside my car, I saw a package on the front seat that I had planned to deliver to a neighbor of ours earlier in the day before going hiking. I was so in need of fresh air, though, that I had forgotten to do it. That took me a bit out of my way, but it needed to be done. I went to my neighbor's house and gave them the package. They invited me in for some tea, and we chatted until it was dark outside, and I said goodnight and began my drive home. As I was driving back, there is a way you can drive that actually goes through the park on Darby Paul Road. I felt so warm from the tea and friendly conversation that I thought it would be nice to take that route home. Once I got near the area, I regretted my decision, though. That same weird mood was back. I could feel it even inside the car. I shivered as I approached the trees. A part of me inside really didn't want to go into that forest. I seriously felt like screaming in fear, It was that bizarre a reaction to driving on a road I had driven on more times than I choose to remember. I tried to laugh at myself, but the fear was real, and it wasn't going to go away until I had emerged on the other side of those trees. Driving into the darkness that night caused me more stress than any number of horrible things I've lived through, which I won't bore you with retellings of. I didn't even know what I was afraid of. Not at first, anyway. But then, very politely, the source of my fear put in a personal appearance, introducing himself in a most memorable way. Out of the trees in front of me ran the tallest and hairiest man I had ever seen. His legs and feet were deformed and looked like a dog's hind legs. His arms appeared quite muscular and ended in claws every bit as long as those on a grizzly bear. This was not a grizzly, though, as the coloring was too dark. It also had very tall, pointed ears. The head looked more like a wolf than anything else, but if that's what it was, then it was an evil wolf. It had a look in its eyes like something straight out of hell, and its eyes were all lit up. They were kind of orange, but went red here and there in flashes. I felt like the color of the eyes reflected the mood of the character possessing those eyes, but maybe the color just changed with the angle that the eyes intercepted my headlights. It did feel like he was changing the colors from within when the experience was happening, so I'm making note of that impression, even though it might not mean anything at all. I don't think this was a fraternity prank because the man was not just very tall. He was big, all around, and he seemed as though he was meant to be that tall. In other words, he hadn't grown to giant stature due to some affliction of his body. He was just a very large, monstrous animal of some sort. There had to be others like him. I don't think he was a malformed or deformed or mutated version of his species. I think that whatever this werewolf-looking SOB was, that's what he was. I don't think he was a bear with mange or a dog with gigantism or any of these sorts of things. This was not a sickly creature I had encountered. This was a healthy and robust monster of a beast. Yes, it stood like a man, and possibly it was some sort of a man, but if so, it was in equal amounts a beast. I swerved around the monster and kept driving. My story is a whole lot of build-up, some screeching tires, and then me getting out of there. I wish I had more to tell you. Wait, on second thought, I'm glad there isn't anything more to tell. When I got home, I told the story to my wife and our son and a cousin who's staying with us. They believed me right off and called another cousin of ours on the phone. While I was telling her my story all over again, her son came back from shopping, and he was as pale as a ghost. She was trying to get him to talk to her, but he seemed in a state of shock at first. I asked her if he had just been on the Darby Paul Road. You can guess what her answer was. We had both seen the same thing on the same road. Word went out to our friends, and the next thing you knew, a few different people hopped into their cars with bright lights and video cameras and started cruising Darby Paul Road looking for the Dogman. Nobody else saw him for the rest of the night. I don't think the Dogman was ready for his close-up. The next day, the rumors started going around about which frat boys supposedly pulled the prank off, but neither I nor my cousin think that what we saw was a frat boy. When people ask us what we both saw that night last week, we look them right in the eye, and we tell them straight out, I saw the werewolf of Wyola. Hey, it's me, Henry Lee Dogman, here to thank those of you who support all of us here at Scary Stories NYC. It really helps us if you click like, and if you forward our videos or leave cool comments. If you can, it helps us even more when you let us share our 25 episode and growing collection of uncensored, scary Dogman stories with you by becoming a paid subscriber at peterbernard.com. That's right. Join our monthly club and get 25 stories right off the bat, each of them wilder than what we're allowed to tell you on this channel. Then, each Sunday, get another new scary story, usually a Dogman story, but always uncensored and secret, available nowhere else on the planet. Please consider joining us today at peterbernard.com and keep the scary stories coming. Thanks, everyone.
Come back for more scary stories.